Hello, friends. Welcome back to Talk Illini, brought to you by Orange and Blue News and the On3 Network. I'm here, Sonny Verma, my co-host, JR. JR, thanks for joining me today.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Sonny.
JR, there's a big game on Saturday that we absolutely have to cover. Illinois Fighting Illini ranked number 9 against the Indiana Hoosiers, who I believe are ranked 19. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right, so obviously all my algorithm, my timelines, my social medias, I'm getting hounded by Indiana Hoosier fans. Obviously, both fan bases have circled this day since the offseason, essentially. Both of these teams were the Cinderella stories of college football last year. Unfortunately, the schedule gods didn't play nice and didn't let these two teams settle it on the field, but looks like both squads are pretty good football teams this year as well. And now here it's going to happen. Week 4, Illinois versus Indiana. In my opinion, it should be the game on the schedule. I can't believe game day is not going to Bloomington. But what are your initial thoughts about this game?
Yeah, I mean, first ranked matchup since like 1950 between these two schools in football. I mean, obviously basketball, you got a lot more ranked matchups there between these two. I don't think college football was ready personally for both Indiana and Illinois fans to be coming at it all at the same time. I think there's probably some SEC fan bases that were like, "Holy cow! I didn't know Indiana and Illinois. We did not know your potential here, guys." But here they are, and it's two rabid fan bases that you got to be ready for if you're going up against them. But overall, in this one, this is going to be such a good game between the two of them. It being at Indiana, I think is better for the game overall because you do have a battle-tested Illinois team, and I think if one of these two teams could deal better with going on the road, it would probably be Illinois. Like I said, older, kind of more battle-tested team. But overall, I mean, these are two great coaches, two great teams. Obviously, Indiana hasn't really played any big competition yet or anything. And I think that's something to me that's in favor of Illinois. They've gone through a team that, albeit, not the best team in the world in Duke, but a respectable team. It's a respectable win, more respectable than I think any wins that Indiana has so far on the season. And so this is a game where this Illinois team, Bret Bielema, they've been through it last year. They've gone through it so far this year. I think Illinois is going to be the more ready team for this game, but that doesn't really matter until the end of the game when you have to put it all together. If this is a one-score game or something like that, Bret Bielema, Luke Altmyer, they're going to have to continue to pull out their magic like they've done in these one-score games because this could be one that goes down to the wire.
You brought up an interesting point, and hopefully before the game I'll be able to upload the interview I did with someone who covers the Indiana Hoosiers. But we know historically, at least not historically, but in the Signetti era, Indiana just does not really play any challenging non-conference opponents. And this year, I want to ask you your opinion on, Duke. Sure, again, Duke doesn't look like it might be one of the ACC favorites like they might have looked like a couple weeks ago, but it was still on the road. And you're talking about a Power 4 win. I think like there is an extra level of difficulty when it comes to that. With Indiana, it's one thing if you play three Sisters of the Poor type of teams, although, if I'm going to be frank, Old Dominion is better than a lot of us projected them to be. But again, a victory over Virginia Tech,
Yeah.
quite honestly, I think me could find 10 guys in the content creating space and we can cover the spread against them at least. But my question is, after those 3 games, it's going to be difficult to adjust, right? You're talking about the amping the difficulty level a couple tiers when you go from Indiana State to the University of Illinois, whereas Illinois has been punched in the mouth. They've had a rough first half against a Duke team, and we saw how they responded. Indiana's played 3 weeks, and quite honestly, they've, of course, gotten pretty confident over those 3 weeks. They just won 73-0 last Friday. Do you think there's any cause of concern from the Indiana side about the leveling up of competition so immediately?
Yeah, I mean, last year you had Indiana, their third game. They went to UCLA. They went on that road trip and spanked UCLA in that game. So I'm kind of looking at last year a little bit to try and, look at this team and see how they operate. That Maryland game last year, they won 42-28. That was really their first time they saw a Big Ten team at home. Obviously, like I said, they went to UCLA, but that was earlier on. This was the first game after all of their non-conference ones, and Maryland was in that game. game for a large portion of it. So it definitely is something here to Indiana hasn't challenged themselves as much in the out of conference. Now you could say that they've been able to work through some of their kinks and weaknesses and stuff like that possibly, but overall when you don't challenge yourself, you're not as prepared for the big games and the big time matchups as much as other teams are. It was one of the conversations I was having with an Indiana fan when I was, being critical of their out of conference schedule, and they were telling me, well, it doesn't matter because, they win those 3 games and then they'll be ready for Big Ten conference play. And I said, did you not listen to Curt talk after he played Ohio State last year? Because Curt talked about how much they learned from that game and how much they're going to implement and get better and do things in different ways. That is something that legitimately happens throughout the season. I know Curt has been a head coach for a long time, but it's only his second year in the Big Ten. Bret has been in the Big Ten for a long time. He was in the SEC for a little bit, albeit not the best, time in the SEC, but still, he was in there. He was going up against some of the best talent, and he's coaching against some of the best coaches in the nation here in the Big Ten. So when you look at the career, everything else, I think Bret Bielema has Curt there. But at the same time, Curt is the one that took his team to the playoffs last year. So there's just so many back and forth things here. I think because of the lack of Indiana playing anybody yet, I'm not as concerned about the slow start as I was earlier on in the week. But there's so many small, minute details in this you're looking for because this is going to be such a close game and one that is going to be so much fun to watch.
I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, these are two teams that they have more in common than these fan bases care to admit. They both have outstanding, brash head coaches. They've got better quarterbacks than most of the rest of college football can claim to have. Good, solid defenses. Offensive lines from both seem to be a little bit concerned with the offensive line play so far this season. What do you think are kind of the keys to victory for the Illini to ultimately come forward with, being on the good side on Saturday?
Yeah, that slow start I mentioned is key number one. You can't have a slow start. If you have a slow start in maybe the first couple drives or something like that, I think you can get out of that. But if you have an entire first half slow start where you only score a field goal or maybe one touchdown, that's not gonna go very well for you because as we saw last year with Indiana, if they can get a jump on you, they'll jump on you and then they'll just keep going away with it. And that's something you cannot allow Indiana to do. Once they get the momentum, once they get going, they are a very difficult team to stop. What did the teams like Notre Dame and Ohio State do last year? They jumped on them first, and even Michigan State last year jumped on them first and held a pretty good opportunity until eventually Indiana got ahead and went. And so I'm not necessarily saying that Illinois has to jump on them and, get a 10-point lead or anything like that, but they need to at least remain within one score by the end of the first quarter, ideally by the end of the second half. And then I think at that point in time, that's when you start letting the physicality of this team, that's when you start letting Luke Altmyer kind of do more of his special work there in the second half, and you can really go into this game and make some things happen because I don't know if Indiana is prepared to play a full 60 minutes yet, right? I mean, they played a full 60 against Old Dominion because they just didn't execute well enough in the red zone for that entire game to put them away. But for the most part, Illinois has been playing long games, right? They played a full game against Duke. They're ready to play this full game against Indiana. Indiana might not be, and you could find a little bit of a strength there for Illinois.
Yeah, you know what? I completely agree with you when it comes to this game. I think Illini fans are a lot less confident than the Hoosier fans, just because the Hoosier fans just got finished watching a 73-0 drubbing. If there's one thing I can say, and I don't think this is being disrespectful towards Indiana, I think it kind of coincides with what you're saying. They're a very good front-running team. Once they get ahead, they really get that momentum rolling, and it's hard to stop that offense. What I really want to see is what happens to the Hoosiers if they get punched in the face first. We know Bret Bielema usually likes to kick off first so he can get the 2-1 last possession in the first half and then get the ball back at the beginning of the second half. I'm very curious if Illinois does win the toss, if he chooses the same route. I just feel like with the game being in Bloomington on Saturday night, they're asking everybody to wear red. That stadium is going to be supercharged. There's going to be a lot of Indiana fans there. I'm sure there's going to be a decent amount of Illinois fans there. I think with all that electricity in the air, it's going to be up to Bret Bielema to try to slow that down, to try to quiet that crowd down. And if all of a sudden, if Luke Altmyer can hand it off to Caden Fagan and they have an 8-9 play drive when they eventually score a touchdown on the first drive, I think that could be huge for a team like Illinois to, just kind of slow things down and kind of make the Indiana Hoosiers fans and team just back up a little bit and saying, okay, you know what? This one is going to be a fight.
Yeah, I mean, you have to have the offensive line to do that, right? I mean, that's kind of what has been the thing that's led these slow starts here recently is the offensive line hasn't exactly played all that super well. Definitely at the beginning of games, some of that has been the pressure on Luke Altmyer and stuff. But overall, this defensive front for Indiana is really really good. I mean, you got Mikel Kamara, Tyreek Tucker, a lot of guys on this defensive line for Indiana. That Illinois, their offensive line is going to have to bring their A game, and they let up some pressures against Western Michigan, a team that does not have anywhere near the talent that Indiana does, in my opinion. And so they're going to have to be prepared for this. And I think J.C. Davis and the left side of the offensive line has been really good. It's more been the concern of the right side of the offensive line for me. Curt has, done some good things here and there. I think he's been pretty good in the run game, maybe not as good in the pass game or in the pass blocking, in my opinion. But overall, this offensive line has got to put it together. You cannot have the slow start. You have to put the offensive line together. And then overall, as well, we're going to need to see Hank Beatty in this one as well, right? Whether it's on special teams, whether it's on offense, he's probably going to be going up against D'Angelo Pons if they have him follow around. Obviously, Beatty lining up in the slot a little bit more, so maybe Pons goes there, maybe they don't. But if you do lure Pons into the slot, you can bring Beatty closer into the offensive line, which is going to give you a better opportunity to possibly run against this team as well, because that's going to take away one linebacker for Indiana to put in the box, and Pons is a smaller defensive back out there. So you could have a possible mismatch that could help you in the run game there, but that second level doesn't happen unless the offensive line does their job of blocking up front and opening up the holes for Laughley, Fagan, whoever it is that's going to be running the ball.
Yeah, that Indiana coaching staff I have a little too much respect for, and I do know that they've seen the same tape that we've been watching, and Hank Beatty has been the star of this Illinois offense through the first 3 games, arguably the MVP of the team through the non-conference schedule. For me, I think one of the key factors, and I think you already did a good job talking about the offensive line. We all know Illini fans are nervous because of that offensive line. Every other unit has played pretty decently. Maybe some questions in the secondary, but I just think we've been so spoiled with our secondary play over the last couple of years that we just know that we're going up against an Indiana quarterback that's really, really good, a USC group of wide receivers that are really, really good, and Ohio State on the schedule. So, of course, them not playing at their peak abilities right now makes us a little nervous. But back to my original point, I think another concern and a key factor for me is if we know Hank Beatty's going to get the ball, I also know Curt Cignetti's going to try to make Hank Beatty not get the ball. And so that means I've been talking all year long, whether it's on Locked On Illini or the show here, that I truly do believe that the wide receiver room this year as a whole is just as, if not more talented than last year's team. But who is going to be that second guy? Because those lights are going to be bright. It's going to be loud. There's, as I mentioned, lots of energy in that stadium. It's going to take a player, I think a young person who's never been in that position before, to have a big game, to have a breakout game. I trust Luke Altmyer, being the senior quarterback. I don't think the environment's going to phase him. But with a lot of more greener guys in that wide receiver room, it is going to be interesting to see if that environment phases them, and to see who is able to break through and possibly have that carry on through the rest of the season, or if this is going to be one of those Hank Beatty and just a rotational group when it comes to wide receiver 2 through the rest of the year.
I mean, it's got to be Justin Bowick, right? I mean, he's going to be back in this game. Bret Bielema made it sound like, which that's huge. You're going to have Bowick back, Rosier, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. The linebacker. I don't,
Yeah, you got it right. You got it.
Rosie. Okay. I'm always terrible with names, so I double check to make sure. And Lawfrey's going to be back as well. So those are huge additions, but definitely in the red zone, it has to be Boak. Boak has got to be that go-to guy in the red zone as he's been before. If Kirk Snetti and his staff are as good as we think they are, which I think they are, they're very, very good. They're going to do everything they can to try and take away Boak in the red zone and Beatty and all these different guys. To me, the probably like key guy in the passing game that you're going to have to get some stuff from is Cole Rusk. You're going to have to get something from him in this one. He has got to go up against these linebackers and make himself a threat, not just in run blocking and stuff like that, and possibly also chipping guys as well. I don't know if Illinois' running backs are going to be able to chip guys like Mikel Kamara and dudes like that. You're going to have some help from the tight end, Cole Rusk, and you're going to have some help from the receivers getting open as well. I do want to ask you, though, Sonny, before we're done with this, what are your thoughts on Illinois' secondary against this Indiana wide receiver unit? Because Omar Cooper Jr. had 4 touchdown catches last game. Now, a lot of that was him just kind of running wild all over the field because Indiana State, let's face it, does not have the athletes that Indiana has. But still, I mean, 4 touchdown catches in the game, and I think that tied a record for Indiana in for their player most touchdown receptions in a game. If they've found something in Cooper Jr. and Elijah Surratt is a big threat as well, you could be looking at an Illinois secondary that's really going to have to be disciplined, tackle well, and also be ripping through blocks very well in order to get the ball, get Omar Cooper Jr. because they love to throw the screen pass to him. It's going to be a huge part of this game.
So I'm a little divisive when it comes to the defensive back rooms. I've watched the all 22s of the game so far. I don't really have an issue with the way the secondary has played. The fan base is a little bit more concerned than I am. Again, it looks like Jaheim Clark is going to play. Again, we don't know for sure. Bret Bielema hasn't confirmed, but it's kind of trending that way. And if that's the case, if we've got a healthy Jaheim Clark on one side and Xavier Scott on the other side, then I'm feeling good. I think Illinois, when healthy, playing at their peak powers, has as good of a secondary as anyone else in the Big Ten Conference. The nickels and the safeties have played great all year long, essentially. It's just been a cornerback play. And even then, I would say against the Duke team, in particular, I remember, the Duke receivers were able to make some passes. And sure, Xavier Scott got beat on one of the touchdowns, but meaning the defensive line could not get to Mensah. And so Mensah is a very good quarterback, right? So if he has time to make the right throw, Duke's got very good wide receivers. It's going to be the same thing against Indiana. If you give Mendoza enough time, I don't care how good of a secondary you have. And this happens in the NFL as well. If you give a quality quarterback enough time to give it to a quality wide receiver, they're going to make the play eventually. So the key there is going to be, can James Thompson, Tamawa Durajai, can Gabe Yakis get to Mendoza? If they can, I think that kind of my concern level goes down a little bit because, as you said, Indiana hasn't faced a defensive front or backfield like Illinois has. So it's going to be an adjustment for Indiana as well.
Yeah, I mean, right now, Indiana, the right side of their offensive line, their right tackle and right guard seem to be a little bit more of the weak link, but overall, this has been a really good offensive line for Indiana throughout the season, so it's hard to find too much of a weak link there on that offensive line. You're really going to have to see a really good game from Yakis and James Thompson Jr., those guys. I mean, and Fernando Mendoza, that's the other piece of him that they didn't have last year with Curtis Rourke, is his mobility and how he is able to move around. I made the point last night on the Big Ten Huddle with Zach. I want to see what Fernando Mendoza is like on the run, right? Is he going to be loose with the ball? Is Illinois going to be able to try and find some opportunities there to maybe strip sack or something like that? Because, listen, Duke, good team, but they were pretty undisciplined with taking care of the ball. I think Indiana is going to be a much more disciplined team. So if Illinois wins this game, I don't think it's going to be because they force 5 turnovers and they don't turn the ball over themselves. In fact, Indiana's only turned the ball over once so far this season, and the guy who turned the ball over, who fumbled it, is out for the season now. He just got hurt last game. So obviously, hope he's okay and he gets back to playing as soon as possible. But I these are two teams that the players on the field have not turned the ball over once so far this season. So it's going to be a huge test for Bret Bielema for Illinois. They're not going to be able to sit back and just say, okay, we'll let Indiana make the mistakes, because this Indiana team, I think, is too well coached and too disciplined to go out there and consistently make mistakes in order for that. They might make a mistake or two, it could happen, obviously, but I don't think they're going to make those consistent mistakes like Duke did to kind of, give them more and more opportunities to where maybe Indiana has a bunch of yards, but they just can never execute at the end of drives or in the red zone or whatever it might be.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the quarterback battle is something I'm really looking forward to. Illinois, traditionally, every time they go up against what's supposed to be a very good quarterback, a premium quarterback, they've actually done pretty well if you think about it. Mensa, a couple weeks ago, of course, we just played. There was a lot of talk about him possibly being the best quarterback on our schedule. Illinois was able to pick him off and kind of frustrate him a little bit. We had Lenore Sellers, who was a potential Heisman coming into this year. They played him in the bowl game in the Citrus Bowl just a few months ago, and Lenore's was game planned almost perfectly. Basically, they kept the game in front of him, forced him to make throws that ultimately he wasn't able to make. Last year, we had the Kansas quarterback on our schedule as well, who was supposed to be a game breaker, who had destroyed us the year before. Aaron Henry, Bret Bielema, it seems in recent memory, have had a pretty good history with game planning for a quarterback. So I'm really curious to see what they've got planned for Mendoza. And really, JR, I had the thought in my mind. It's like, we know Illinois is ranked top 10 right now and Indiana's ranked top 20, but I don't know how much of these teams we've really seen so far, because, sure, Duke was maybe a step up in difficulty, but not a team that Illinois should not have been able to handle. So how much of the offense, how many of the blitzing schemes have we seen from both Illinois and Indiana, and how much of it was just waiting for week 4 to really unleash what these teams are capable of?
Yeah, I'm one of those people that I don't think coaches hold as much back as the fans think they do. I mean, obviously they hold some back because they're plays that people talk about they don't run until week 13, 14. But I don't know if it's always like intentional, like, oh yeah, we're saving this play against Indiana or something like that, because or vice versa, Indiana saving a play for Illinois or something like that. Because you think about it, the game reps means so much more than just practice reps, right? And so how many guys are actually, like, offensive coordinators are actually going to trust, hey, I'm going to run this play for the first time. We've only ever ran it in practice. I'm going to run this play for the first time against, this top 10 opponent that we're facing or something. I mean, it might happen here and there, but I don't think there's like some secret portion of the playbook that, Barry Lunny Jr. has just like got stored in a locker in his office, and he's just like, it's got Indiana's name on it, and he's just like ready to pull it out as soon as they're done with Western Michigan and start getting all over it. And likewise, I don't think there's so much that happened with Indiana either. So there might be a few little wrinkles here and there that maybe some schematic things, and maybe they line up Beatty in the backfield or something like that at one point. I mean, he surely has the athleticism to do that, but I don't know if we're gonna see a whole lot of that stuff. What do you think? Do you think that they save a whole bunch?
I do.
Yeah.
I think Bret Bielema said so in a press conference earlier this week, that they've been planning for this game against Indiana since spring. Essentially, they know that Curt Cignetti is not, as you mentioned earlier, this is not a team that you're going to be able to take advantage of takeaways like you have in the past. I think both teams here understand the importance of this game, and I guess we can talk about that next. Just the heavy importance that this game has for both programs moving forward. You have the top 3, 4. You have Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, Michigan at the top of the Big Ten Conference, but right now, Illinois and Indiana are in a fight, essentially, to be on top of that second tier when it comes to the Big Ten Conference. A lot of these guys, they compete for the same type of recruits, and again, being in the same conference, if there's only 4 at-large or 4 spots from the CFP, that means Illinois and Indiana are going to be battling for that 4th spot. What do you think this means for both of these programs to be victorious on Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's prove it for them, but in different scenarios, right? For Indiana, it's kind of like prove it that you didn't just have an easy schedule last year and you can actually play against a top tier team in the country and beat them. And then for Illinois, it's almost prove it as, like prove that you're worth it being up here. We've seen the guys that you're bringing back, we've seen all this stuff, and so we believe in you. But this is your time to prove that you belong up here. We've kept you in the top 10. Other top 10 teams have, big wins and stuff like that. You guys haven't had one yet. Here's your opportunity. We've kept you in the top 10. You've played well up until well, I shouldn't say up until now, but to this point you've played really well. Can you continue to play well? And unfortunately, that's the part of it that I don't really think is fair, because if this is a good game, I think it says more about both teams being good teams rather than what the media narrative might be, which is like, oh well, these teams weren't good enough or anything, because we often see that in the Big Ten, right? We often see the national media come out and say, oh, these two Big Ten teams, they played way too close of a game, so they're not nearly as good of a team as we think. But then you see South Carolina and I don't know, some other team, Ole Miss and Arkansas, right? Ole Miss and Arkansas just played a game with virtually no defense, and both people are coming out of that one being like, Taylor Green's the second best quarterback in the SEC, and Arkansas is a way slept on team. Well, maybe they are, or maybe just both teams don't know how to play defense. Maybe that's a part of it too. So I think it's going to be really hard for for one of these schools to kind of maintain their perception after the game. Whoever loses it is going to be the ire of the national media's kind of go after the Big Ten team, and that's kind of what adds to the pressure that much more, right? It's the prove it, it's the we don't want to be downtrodden or anything, and that whole aspect of it. But if I had to pick who has more pressure in this one, I do think Indiana has more pressure. I do think Cincinnati has more pressure. It's at home for them. Illinois is arguably the second, and I think it is. I think they're the second best team that Indiana has ever faced under Cincinnati in the regular season. And on top of that, they they do still need to prove some stuff, right? Like I'm high on Indiana. I think they're a good program, but I don't know if they're a college football playoff contender every single year type of mode or anything like that. And they're going to have to prove it. Bret Bielema, he proved himself at Wisconsin, made it to multiple Big Ten championship games. He's come to Illinois. He's put his blueprint on this program, and he doesn't seem to be wanting to go anywhere anytime soon. He's loyal. He's proven himself at Wisconsin, and he continues to prove himself at Illinois, taking a quarterback that got benched 2 years ago, and now he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we'll wrap the show up with. Who has more pressure on them to win this game? Not necessarily Indiana or Illinois, but Bret Bielema and Curt Cignetti. And I think you took a lot of the words just straight out of my mouth. I also think Curt's got more pressure to win this game, mainly because, as you mentioned, Bret has a history of being successful. He's won Big Ten titles. He's played in the SEC. He's played in big games before, and he's won. Curt Cignetti has done a super admirable job at JMU, and of course, Indiana was the Cinderella story of all of college football last year. But they have a case where Illinois is a top 10 team, but a lot of folks may not believe Illinois is a top 10 team, and they have them at home. If Indiana isn't able to take care of business against Illinois at home, like it or not, that Indiana fan base, who already seems very insecure and trying to answer for them not being able to beat any ranked teams, well, they're going to become even more delirious with this point, because at that point, like, questions will start arising that are they just, beaters of the lesser teams? And then their schedule does not get any easier after that, because I would argue between Illinois, they have Oregon, they have Penn State on their schedule remaining. Obviously, Illinois is the easiest, I use air quotes, to have a victory, especially when you have this game at home. I think Curt's got to win this game, and I think Curt Cignetti knows he has to win this game. I watch Curt Cignetti press conferences, as often as I can, because he's usually very entertaining. He was very much in business mode when it came to talking about Illinois. He was very respectful. There was no jabs back and forth, nothing like that. He had the utmost respect for Bret Bielema. He talked about Illinois being a really good football team. I have a feeling that Curt Cignetti knows he's going to have to win this game on Saturday night. Otherwise, the questions just aren't going to stop, because then the pressure is on defeating an Oregon team, defeating a Penn State team, and that's not going to be easy either.
Yeah, I mean that's the other part of it that we didn't even mention until now. The remaining schedules to get to the playoffs, right? There's been some people talking about how this is like an elimination game. Whoever loses this one can't make the playoffs. I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that there is a path for the Big Ten to get 5 teams into the playoffs. I don't think it's likely. So I guess if you want to look at it that way, it is an elimination game if you're looking at the most likely scenario. But if you look at the remaining schedule, really, Illinois has 3 big games to end the year where they need to win 2 of those: USC, Ohio State, and Washington. Indiana, their 3 big games after this one: Iowa, Oregon, Penn State, and all 3 of those are on the road. So if you look at this scenario, which team needs the win more because it gives them 2, possible losses they could probably deal with and still get into the playoffs? It's Indiana, because I don't want to go to Oregon. I don't want to go to Happy Valley, right? I would rather play USC at home or Ohio State at home than one of those 2 teams on the road. Now, obviously, I'd rather get Iowa on the road than probably any of those. I think that's probably the best one out of the rest. Is that what you would say? USC at home, Ohio State at home, Washington on the road, Iowa on the road,
Yeah,
Penn State on the road. Or I say Iowa State. Probably
I think Iowa's the poorest team. Hopefully, there's no Hawkeye fans watching this, but
that's okay. Let them be mad. So I would say that's probably the best scenario there. But the at Oregon, at Penn State, I don't know if those are better teams than Ohio State, but they're in the tier 1 with them, and them being road games make them more difficult. So this is a huge game for Indiana to win, for pride, for playoffs, and just for the team as well.
Jerry, have you made a prediction for this game yet?
I have. I picked Illinois to win this one, 23-20. I think both teams are going to be pretty stout in the red zone, and I think that Bret Bielema is going to be okay with taking the points. He knows that he can trust his defense in this one, and I think Indiana is probably going to suffer from maybe going forward on 4th down once or twice, and they won't get it, which impacts the game, and Illinois gets one more field goal to win it.
I just submitted my prediction to Orange and Blue News and On3, and I did 30-27 Illinois. At this point, I have more of a track record with Bret Bielema and Luke Altmyer as opposed to Cignetti and Mendoza, and so my trust is going to be with them. I have it going over, but just because I have a feeling that for 2 teams that don't turn over the ball, that this just could be one of those games where there's a defensive touchdown somewhere. I don't know in which direction, but that's one of the random predictions I'm going to make for this game. But again, the game's going to be on at, I believe, 6 o'clock Saturday Central Time at least. Make sure you catch up on all your news at Orange and Blue News, and make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Brand new channel. This is, I believe, our 3rd video. We're going to constantly be doing this as often as we can. JR and I will try to do a game recap against Indiana, and then the following week against USC. And I'll also have a preview with an Indiana content creator just to get to learn a little bit more about the Hoosiers. So make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Send it to more Illini fans in your life. Until next time, ILL.